Shabbat Shalom, everyone. While I was an assistant rabbi in Las Vegas, something amazing happened. We got a babysitter to watch our 3 children, and we went on a date and saw a show on the Las Vegas Strip. Typically, when I say I was a rabbi in Las Vegas, it sounds a lot more fun than it was, but most of the time, we lived a very boring life in the suburbs. But occasionally, my wife would drag us out to see a Cirque du Soleil show. I know that acrobats are super talented, and this show had some of those acrobats, but this was more of a variety show, and my favorite act from the show was an act that I have dubbed the Bubble Guy. Towards the end of the performance, this really interesting looking fellow appeared on the stage. And he was so odd, in fact, he didn't even really seem human. He was almost like a cartoon character. He was a tall, skinny English gentleman adorned with a pinstripe suit and a top hat. And he had a small, antique-looking cart with a variety of tubes, pipettes, and what appeared to be bubble solutions in these little vials. And he simply said, "Hello, I like to play with bubbles." Then, without much more fanfare, he began to blow these amazing bubble concoctions that I didn't even know were possible. Now, I've made bubbles with a simple wand, but this guy could blow amazing shapes that were enormous. Not only were they big, but they were multi-layered, multi-shaped wonders that took on forms that looked like they weren't even from this world. He had a variety of these vape pens that he filled with different gases because he would blow the gas into the bubbles, and he could make the bubbles levitate or he could make them sink. He continued to make enormous bubble palaces with rooms inside and rooms inside the bubble rooms, with bubbles taking on square and octagonal shapes. At one point in his act, Bubble Guy mentioned that he had learned the next trick from someone he admired very much. Another bubble master, he said. And when he said this, I thought to myself, wow, there's bubble masters? Are there schools of bubble magic? Are there students and pupils of the bubble arts? Can you apprentice to be a bubble guy? What have I been doing with my life? The rabbi thing doesn't work for me. I've decided my next career is going to be bubble guy on the Las Vegas Strip. Dear friends, I've seen a lot of those Las Vegas acts. Comedians, contortionists, acrobats, and jugglers galore, but I have never seen a bubble guy before. And then, if that wasn't cool enough, to conclude his act, Bubble Guy gave this very inspirational speech. He said something to the effect of, quote, "Bubbles are quite fleeting. They last only a moment, but they can transmit an enormous amount of beauty. Therefore, I have dedicated my life to displaying these incredible objects in order to present the idea that every moment we have is precious and capable of joy." Wow, Bubble Guy, you're the man. I looked over at one of the women sitting next to us in the row, and she was crying at the Bubble Guy's speech. I left the theater that night just in awe of Bubble Guy. I'm telling you, he wasn't just a bubble guy, he was a bubble prophet. Speaking of prophets, Moshe Rabbeinu, from our Torah portion, he begins Parshat Ha'azinu talking about bubbles himself. This is Deuteronomy 32:2. It quotes Moshe as saying, quote, "My teaching shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill like bubbles of dew." Now, why does Moses say this? Well, I think we have to look at the context of what he's saying. When, as I've mentioned before, in this Parsha, Moshe is at the end of his life, and he is essentially giving his deathbed confession. He knows that this is most likely the last teaching he will ever give. So essentially, his words will dissipate like the bubbles of dew on the blades of grass. Moses is re-evaluating his life and the choices he has made. God tells him at the end of this parsha that he won't get to go to the promised land because he struck the rock instead of speaking to it. And now, while he's giving this teaching, he's really understanding the fleeting nature of life. Now, this happens to all of us. We make decisions, sometimes impulsively, perhaps not knowing the full impact of what we decide, not able to comprehend all the consequences of our actions, and then we're forced to live with the result. Or we have an intense experience and we have to live out that aftermath. Perhaps that's how some of us are feeling right now. We've just experienced 2 days of a very powerful holiday, Rosh Hashanah. The new year gives us a new opportunity as we await the Day of Atonement that will make us confront all of our iniquities. And then, boom, these holidays are over and we go back to normal life. Except, then there's a very interesting holiday that's all about exploring the temporary. We erect these tents or these booths in our backyard that celebrates the space that are in between our homes. Really, the whole point of Sukkot is to dwell literally in uncertainty. The Torah wants us to recognize that our ancestors were, at least for one part in history, truly nomadic, wandering from point A to point B, just trying to exist. Every year in Chicago, the city hosts an annual sukkah building competition. And while to build a kosher sukkah, you technically only need 3 small walls and then some skach, or organic material, for a roof, this competition really challenges the architects to build these incredible structures that in all likelihood are only going to be torn down a week or 2 later. Just like the bubble guy, these people put forth a great deal of effort to instill beauty in the world, only for it to just disappear. Dear friends, it has been said that human beings are not a big fan of change. If that's true, then the Jewish people are especially not fond of it. We like to hold on to the past. We cherish our traditions and oftentimes are hesitant to embrace the future. Whether we acknowledge it or not, life is full of constant changes. Our interactions, situations, and emotions are always changing. Have you ever looked at something now that you wrote a while back? It probably made you cringe a little bit. That's because, just like the words of Moses, the dew bubbles on blades of grass, our words are usually meant to be fleeting. So this Shabbat, when we've just finished Rosh Hashanah, and it's not Yom Kippur and not Sukkot yet, we ourselves are in a somewhat temporary place. Maybe our thoughts and our words are a bit fleeting too. So my suggestion for this Shabbat, my suggestion is to sit and enjoy where we're at. It's tempting to want to relish in the feelings that we've had before, and we'll certainly want to try and get to the next best thing. But if Bubble Guy has taught me anything, it's to cherish the moment that we're in right now. If, like me, you are still thinking about putting up your sukkah. You have a while to do it, but I want to advocate one thing. When you get to Sukkot, instead of putting it up hastily, because you know it will only come down about a week later, perhaps you could take an extra moment to make it as beautiful as it can be, to enhance the mitzvah, hidor mitzvah. Life gives us no guarantees of happiness, so it's up to us to make every moment count. We shouldn't stay cooped up like a bubble boy. We should get out there and make life beautiful like Bubble Guy. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.